Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome once again Monday night to the political consciousness of West Coast Steeler fan. Um, we are going to talk about January 6th and whether or not uh, it has had any effect or affect on the black community, and what does uh, what is the final implications of this if there are no repercussions for these actions. And by that, I mean everyone is expecting the right to take charge of the House after the midterm elections. So, in essence, we are rewarding the party of insurrection by putting them in public office after these demonstrations. Being from Ohio, I'm very interested to see how this current election pans out. Excuse me, not the election, but primary. Uh, I believe it takes place tomorrow, and we have a GOP candidate that's endorsed by Trump, Vance, J.D. Vance, who so far seems to be in the lead. Once again, you know, I can go back to, or let's go back to, excuse me, and I'm sure you can find it archived somewhere on YouTube, where Trump actually stood in Lordstown and told them that their Chevrolet plant would not be closed down. What happens? Plants closed down. The labor force shrinks. And Trumbull County and Mahoney County remain hotbeds of the Republican Party. So once again, we reward incompetence and insurrection by keeping these people in office. Now, I am definitely on the left, but I also realize that we have had Democrats in office for years that also do not keep their promises. And it's kind of redundant to keep saying that just because people look like you do not always mean that they have your best interests in mind. They have agendas too. So I'm going to use a word that we don't like to really use in our political system, and it's called independent. In most cases, and how where you can, uh, a lot of times you have to register as a Democrat or a Republican. But in most cases, when you see independent candidates, we usually skip by them. Ah, I see Dr. Casey is here in the queue. Dr. Casey, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, man. When you talk about that, I am registered as a independent, so I can't vote in the primaries, and I really want to re-register
See,
just to vote in the primaries. And I got so pissed off. I actually went off on the people, the volunteers, because I was like, look, I shouldn't be exempt from voting. Actually, I should be able to vote for both.
right, anyone that you want. Well,
Right.
but and I learned that lesson kind of the hard way because when I was in Ohio voting, uh, Pennsylvania, because I moved out here from Pittsburgh, but when I was in Pennsylvania, I was registered as an independent. And like you, it's like, well, when the primaries come up, well, you can't vote. Well, I mean, these people still control, there's judges, there's state representatives,
Well,
the
no,
whole
no.
nine
Well,
yards.
it's some judges. Like I see judges on my sample ballot, but I don't see any ability to vote for congressmen to put them in the primaries. Or it's some other offices that I know that are running that I don't have the option for, and that pisses me off.
But I mean, let's go back to the original premise that judges are supposed to be impartial and they're not supposed to be run. Judges are supposed to be independent.
I mean,
Yeah,
but we all know that that's not the case.
right, right. But I mean, this has been the myths since I was a little boy. Before I learned even about the justice system and learned, yeah, the judge depends on who's paying them, whether it's Republican or
Right.
Democrat.
And it's so
But
crazy that part because you know that people can technically be in a judge's pocket, even when they're not supposed to be able to be. But like I think that they really play favoritisms, and it's crazy to kind of see it play out because um if you're in a court situation and a judge is presiding over you, you have to know the law because if you don't say something, then they gonna let whatever fly, unless you call them on it, kind of.
well, maybe the criminal justice system has changed since I was a part of it, but I usually found that there was a lawyer that could get to the judge. And usually there was a fee involved. I mean, you already knew that,
Yeah, that's
you
why I
know.
think why certain lawyers cost so much.
Oh, of course, like, hey, like I said, I know at least, two of kids that I put through college for my criminal attorney. Uh, and that's just kind of putting it mildly. I'm just kind of figuring it. I'm figuring it on the value back in those days. I mean,
Mhm.
but anyway, and lawyers were kind of like doctors. You have an orthopedic doctor here. You have, a different. Well, you have one lawyer that's a fixer. You have one lawyer that uh, he has a little pull here. Yeah, I mean, so I mean, that's how I learned about the justice system and the reason why I talk of things that I did because you cannot rob gas stations and survive in the criminal justice system. That just does not work. You know,
Not
snatching
if you get
grandmas,
caught.
especially if you get caught. You know, I mean, uh, it's it, it's frustrating now because we talk about police reform, and I know everybody says, okay, we need the police. Okay, yeah, all right, that's a given. We need some type of law enforcement, whether you want to call them police, whatever you want to call them. We do need some type of law enforcement.
Some type
You
of
know,
social enforcement.
right? I mean, um, but it's not just police reform. You need a system reform. I would say it starts with the police because things start. Your cash total starts from the time that you are arrested. From then on, it just goes. It just keeps going unless you had the ability to stop it, either financially or through that pipeline to prison, as we talk about. But when the policeman has to make a certain number of arrests.
This is why I am against quota-based policing. I think that like okay, so in my suggestion for ending quota-based policing, I would strongly suggest for like police to escort school field trips, things that go about protecting schools a little bit more, especially like I, as a parent, have gone on several field trips, and they don't be paying no attention to school buses on them highways. And I could just see where police could kind of change and recreate their image, but also really recreate the structure of what it is that they do. And then you wouldn't have to train them to police crime as much, but you would need to train them for social skills so that they could deal with the parents, children, and schools to coordinate, trips, because schools take a lot of trips. It's a lot of schools. So it's enough schools to get police escorts to help to subside the need for quota based policing. And then you can get bonuses from doing extra stuff like basketball games at night and things like that. So I am not a person that like to come up with a whole lot of complaints without thinking about solutions. So my solution for restructuring that would be the field
Well,
trips and other type of pickup jobs like that that they could do instead of sitting waiting and clocking.
well, first of all, you have to remember that quota-based policing does not exist. That's
It
the first
does.
thing. that
They,
we
they
know
they might not
that.
want to admit it, but if you got to get a certain amount of stops and you get paid for going to court, and then you get paid for, you know what I'm saying? Like you get paid extra for showing up at court. Like you get paid extra, and then
Thank you for
it's
your
so
you,
crazy.
you get paid. Every detective that's involved in your case gets paid for his court appearance.
Yep.
Every
If they
every
show up,
every
they
every everyone that shows up from CSI gets paid if they have to make a court appearance.
mhm.
From
They
the
don't even have to
fingerprint,
call them up there to the stand. They just
no,
gotta
they have to
just
put them on the
have to
witness
be there.
list.
Mhm. Yep.
They just have to put them on the witness list, and if they're called, they have to be there.
Mhm.
You know, but
So
I know.
it's a lot of like the pipeline, and then if I'm not mistaken, even the attorneys at some point, aside from whatever pay for the service, get paid from the court also.
Well,
So
see,
it's a lot of backdooring that goes on to
that
kind of keep people encouraged. Like, because if I was a defense attorney, yeah, I'm gonna help you win, but I'm gonna drag it on out a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Uh, I'm gonna get it done, the best that I can, but I'm also gonna do it to the best of my advantage and my you know what I'm saying, what I'm trying to
Well,
do. Uh
it might cost you time, it might cost you money, but an attorney, part of the attorney's job is to get you in front of a favorable judge, a
mhm,
judge that's favor, him and the judge play golf together, him and the judge, so forth and so on. Like you say, there's a lot of back doors,
mhm,
that are involved. You donate to the judge needs so and so for his favorite charity. That's
mhm,
the story that you get. I mean, and uh, I had an attorney that whenever I was in a certain situation, he would hand me a list. This is what I want. I'll see you at the bail bondsman in a couple hours. And as long as I took care of what was on that list, my black ass was out doing what I do. But once again, it also depends upon the amount of capital that you have.
mhm,
Which kind of brings me back to my original argument here, because I was talking about how, well, there's a primary in Ohio tomorrow.
mhm.
And as everyone knows, I'm from Youngstown. But,
And I'm from Dayton.
the, oh, okay. Oh, my goodness. See, that kind of explains, never mind. Anyway, uh,
Oh, wait, don't even do that. So what it explains what? What exactly does it explain, James? What does it explain? I want to know.
well, that kind of interaction between Dayton, Ohio. I mean, we're very territorial in Ohio. For instance, for instance, LeBron James can never be my favorite basketball player because he's from Akron. I can recognize his
Oh
talents,
my
but he's
God.
from Akron. He's from Akron.
Well, he's
Okay.
from Ohio though. That's the kicker.
Well, that's what now. Now, if we get into a state thing, I'm going to defend my state. Now, if we get into a state thing, but uh, see, I remember when we had 7 champions from my little town. You know, world champions. So I mean, there's about a certain amount of little pride, a little swagger there. Of course, we also had the most bombing since 1958 too. So
It's a little bit of give, a little bit of take. It's
yeah,
valid.
but when I was doing my little thing, we didn't have this thing broken up into races. It was more broken up into segments. It was like, Dayton, Youngstown, Columbus. It wasn't so much of this black, white, Puerto Rico, like, and you got to get in this gang if you come. It wasn't kind of like that, but you did defend your territory. Uh, that's why I kind of, and of course, the women of Dayton. I've made that drive a few times. You know. I'm not, I'm not, I'm not going.
And we
I,
produce some very thoroughbred women.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
the
yeah,
whole Midwest from Detroit.
we're frozen here, Doc. But I know you're saying something about that whole midsection, and the just the whole atmosphere. Um, I think, and I might be wrong, uh, but I'm sure you're going to agree with me that I think go out and come back, Doc. Maybe that's why you froze. You back now? I see you blinking your eyes.
So
You must be back now.
yeah, my my internet. I have a couple extenders for home security and stuff, and so it jumps and does what it want to do sometimes.
well, they all do that. I mean, if we could control it, that would, but no, I was saying, uh, just especially mentally, not so much physically, but if you're dealing with a woman from the Midwest, it's a whole different ball game.
I mean, they are, I from my experience, the women that I know, even the men though are a lot more thorough and solid, and it's just something about that environment that it's nowhere near like New York, but it's tough though. But then it's nowhere near as laid back and free as California. But it's
No,
not, you know what I'm saying? It's like it's a perfect balance, it seems like. I mean, and I don't understand why it's the Midwest and it's way on the East. But I mean, yeah.
you know, I've always said, and you can, look around when you talk about any type of, whether it's legit or not. Somewhere up on the top of it, there's a guy from Columbus. There's a guy from Toledo. Somewhere up in there, there's a guy up in that mix. you know, but yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying. I mean, it's always been my intention that if you can grow up in the Midwest, you can go and live anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter.
It's like we're adaptable. We it's like, and not in a bad way. It's not like we try to be like anybody else or anything like that, but we're very adaptable.
But well, you mentioned the part right there is that we don't really want to be like anyone else.
Right.
We're us.
Mhm,
Yeah, you
mhm.
you take us or leave us. you know,
Right.
So, but and also, well, getting back to the original story where Donald Trump stood up there and told these people that their plant was going to stay open, they were going to have their jobs, and then as we know, the plant closed down, jobs are gone, but yet, even with this primary coming up, Ohio has gone Republican.
They've
It's been
always been Republican.
it's been. I was just going to say it's been Republican, but when you look at what the Republicans have done in the state of Ohio, and it's not just Republicans. I mean, because there are Democrats that have done the same thing. I mean, we got Democrats that have been in office since I was in my 20s, you know, and
Listen, as
and
long
there
as
hasn't
they
been any
haven't
change.
as long as they still having KKK rallies freely in Ohio, then that says enough for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I mean, they
Canfield,
have them
Ohio.
here in Georgia too, but
Well, but a lot of people don't realize that. I mean, that Ohio is KKK territory. I mean, there were sundown towns in Ohio. Okay, they weren't just in Mississippi and Alabama. There were sundown towns in Ohio. There were sundown towns in Indiana.
I
There was
heard I read about them. I read a lot of books on history just so that I'm familiar with, the culture or whatever. And there were they in Missouri too a lot.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah,
All over through there. I mean,
w-
really everywhere, but
yeah,
some places were worse than others.
yeah. At one time, the KKK, one of the Supreme Dragons or whatever they call themselves, not the national guy, but one of the big guys, lived right there in Canfield, Ohio. If you look at the history of Youngstown, there were riots, like you say, KKK riots, because uh, they didn't want the blacks to have certain jobs. But,
Listen, up in that area, all in that vicinity from there all the way to Virginia, Native Americans were strongly in those
don't
populated
forget
in the area.
Pennsylvania. Don't
No,
forget
that's why I said
Pennsylvania.
all up and through there, from Ohio all the way through, the Carolinas, Virginia, all of New England, all of that. was heavily saturated with Native Americans, but they were deemed colored and then deemed African Americans. So they often lost their Native heritage when they identified in the census because they were not identified as Native Americans. They were identified as other. Sometimes mulatto. I know on one of my family records, it also stated mulatto. Also,
Yeah, many different terms. Mulattoes, colored, Negroes. I mean, like,
well, they that's how they I would say stole our identity and our heritage because instead of calling people who they were as Native Americans, they referred to them as something else. So then after generations of being called different names, you don't even realize that you're actually Native Americans.
right. I mean, and then it got so diluted. I mean, even what's her name, the old prune. She has some good programs. I forget her name, but
Ooh.
she's close to uh, Bernie. Uh, Trump used to call her Pocahontas because she claimed that she was Cherokee or something, and it
Mhm.
turned out that I think it was she claimed to be Native American.
And
She
then
went
what
to
happened?
school. She went to school and got grants as a Native American, and then they found out that she was not a Native American. But it was how everybody in the class was Cherokee or Blackfoot. How you just some identities, as you say, were just stolen. It's just
Mm,
flat out. Well, hey, I need this and this. Especially during the era of EOC. I mean, was equal opportunity.
mhm,
You know, so a lot of things were stolen. Just like all of a sudden you wanted that one drop of black blood, and
mhm,
so you could get that grant.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
So you know,
For a lot of people.
yeah, yeah, so it, it amazes me how we can, if you have someone that is not conducive to your situation or to your particular brand of politics, why do you keep voting these people in office? You
I
wake up
mean,
in the morning. I mean, you wake up in the morning and one year your elementary school is closed. So that means that that the next year your middle school is closed. And the year after that, your high school is closed.
well,
And
a
you
lot of
and
the
you,
time
and you
it's
keep
very
seeing this
perfect.
trend.
If nobody else is running, then what are you going to do?
Well, no, that's it. That's kind of
That's the problem.
what. Well, and as you see, I think I have one here, and I'm sure you have one. If the little pamphlets that they send out before the primary, where they have like each candidate's little and it tells you what he's supposed to stand for and all like that. Well, I mean, like I said, if no one's running against him, especially judges, and you can look at it, down. There are a lot of judges that run unopposed.
Mhm.
you know, and like you say, if you don't vote for them, who do you vote for?
It ain't nobody else. I mean, even if you don't vote for them, if they on there, they go
Right,
in because ain't nobody else
right,
vote. I mean, like,
because they're the
what you
only
can do
one.
about
They're
it?
the only candidate that there. So, you know,
Ain't nothing you can do.
no. Well, there is something you can do, but we don't do because we're not that proactive.
What you
You
can
know,
do.
well, you could get your own candidate, like, and as you
I
and I
mean,
both pointed out,
no, no, I'm
there
talking
you
about,
can be an independent. You can run as an independent.
but
You can run.
in the nature of okay, now it's time for elections, and there's nobody else but that person on there. There is
Oh,
nothing else you can
well,
do.
no. Yeah, by the time it gets to that, yeah, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, sometimes you
But
be giving them in Minnesota a hard little time about how the people keep getting in office, but ain't nobody else running. So if nobody else runs, then the person is going to easily stay in office because nobody else is running.
Okay, so no. Here's my problem with the people of Minnesota. Okay, like you said, there's nobody else running. Okay, so if a certain group decides that they're going to run and they're successful, then you should not be mad at that group because you had 30 years before they got there to establish yourself. So why are you crying now when another group is taking your place? Why not align yourself with that group? Maybe we can learn some lessons if we stop putting the blinders in front of our eyes. And then, if, like you said, if there's no one else running, or if you got somebody on there that's talking about, women's rights, then it would make sense that people are not going to vote for your dumb ass.
Right.
So you have to put a viable candidate up there. So and
But
like
you
I
can't
said,
force people to run. So how do you materialize a candidate that is one interested and then two capable?
well, but you had 30 years to develop that.
Yeah, you keep saying that, but everybody ain't haven't been there to say, okay, we're going to develop that. Do you know how many issues that leadership have with putting other leaders in place? Like the fear, the insecurity of being washed out, like it's a lot of ego within that realm of leadership because, nobody wants to train their replacement, but they don't realize that you are disadvantaging the future generations because there is nobody there to pick up the slack or to even work with you.
Right. But now, and here's another reason why, I'm kind of tough on that situation. If you have an immigrant population, and we're not talking about Asian, or if you have an immigrant population that looks like you, and their graduation rate is twice that of yours, their unemployment rate is half of what yours is, and their community is a voting block. They vote for one another, like and like Mr. Scott was saying, they put each other. If one advances, they put their brother. Hey, nepotism at its best, been done to us for years,
Mhm,
but they put someone that they're familiar with or that their community is familiar with in that position so the chain is maintained.
mhm.
And that's all I'm saying is, like, don't be jealous, improve yourself. You know, that's a that's all I'm saying. I mean, you tell me you have a $60 million budget for education. The teachers go on strike because you got $100 million surplus. I mean, come on now.
I mean, they definitely need to do the work and invest in the areas that will make great change. But a lot of times people are okay with this is how it's always been or this is the way it's done. And then it's like with a company, when you sell a company, it's hard to keep the same staff there. Normally when you sell a company gets sold, they wipe everybody out. They lay off everybody because if you try to keep the same people there and you're building something new, they're not going to want to stray from what they've been already trained to do. So they're going to keep doing what they're used to doing by second nature, really, but also because they'll be stubborn in their ways in most cases. So even somebody that says they're open and you start talking to them and you start showing them and then they're going to say, but this is the way we did it, And why can't we do it this way in most cases? At some point, they're going to complain.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that that's not just in the real world. That's in everywhere, the underworld, wherever you go. I mean, that's the nature of the beast. If you keep old people in the same positions and you try to make change, there's going to be some type of feedback. Not always positive because everybody is not adapt to change. Um, but and once again, another stupid ass thing in the news today. We have another, we talk about education, and we have another young black man denied attendance in school because of his hairstyle. And I mean, you know, d- to me, at this stage of my life, these things seem very petty. I mean, you know, we talked about the kid in school that couldn't get a haircut, but the principal didn't tell him that he couldn't come to school.
Well,
We talked about the kid that had to wear the same pair of jeans to school every day, but we didn't stop him from coming to school. The kid that smelled and didn't take a bath. We might give him one of those, a hobo shower as we called it, but we didn't stop him from coming to school. It's hard enough now to get kids interested in education. Now all of a sudden you're going to tell them that, well, your eyebrows are too long, and hey, baby,
well,
we don't want you to wear those dreads.
you gotta think about this. Then there was a very defined standard that so a lot of the things that people are complaining about and making petty about are things that what people wasn't pushing the norm to do back then. It was uncommon for people to push the norm. So now that people are branching off and pushing the norm, it is becoming a problem because they want it to be the way that it's always been. They want to be able to control that. And then before they didn't have to control it, quote unquote, because it was just a standard. Like you had to normally look a certain way to be considered presentable. And now people are straying away from what society calls presentable.
What is okay?
What?
The dreads have been around for years, for centuries. Not for
How
centuries.
common did you on a day-to-day basis see people with dreads? How
Well,
common?
no, I didn't say it was common. But
That's the point that I was making. That it was
but
not common. And the reason why it wasn't common is specifically because we were taught and told to be clean cut. To be a black person, you got to be clean cut. You got to look a certain type of way so that you can get treated with some type of respect or dignity. And I put my air quotes up because I mean, is it really respect? You know what I'm saying? Like, but that was the thought process. So you had to iron your clothes. You had to do all these things because you got to be, presentable to the white man. Or when you go out there, if the white man to you, you got to look like you got some business about yourself, so they won't harass you. So when you think about all of those narratives that people played into, they were afraid to wear dreads like that. I mean,
we'll
people
see.
had them, but nowhere
Okay,
near like now.
well, okay. Uh, uh, you probably. I'm going to say you're right, probably at the edge of the subject here, but okay. Back in the 70s and 80s, hairstyles meant a lot, like you said. So if there was a certain guy that walked around, and I'm talking about before Michael Jordan, of course. But if there was a guy that walked around with his head shaved and uh, bald, beard, you kind of thought about, like, what does this guy stand for? If there was a guy with dreads, you probably thought that, hey, I know this guy got some weed, and then you did, you, you know, and
Gotta have that.
and like you said, if you were part of society and you were that clean cut guy, you had the must, you
Even when you think about the military, they make you dress a certain type of way. They make you be a certain type of presentable. I mean, like I think they're trying to change it now, but that has not always been the case. Like I remember getting in trouble because I had red hair, or like it was not even red, it was like a dark burgundy, but it was too much for what my chain of command wanted me to
right,
look like.
right,
So I had to
right,
change it. And it
right.
was like, this is stupid. Like it's not even like it ain't red. Like it wasn't like this fire red that you see nowadays. It was just a little bit of tint.
Yeah, yeah, so but so it seems I would be more concerned about whether or not this young man graduated than I would be about his hair or his appearance. But once again, I'm talking about Texas, where we're getting some very, you know, uh,
That and it's just saying where it is. You have to say, well, what do you expect? I mean, like in some places you expect certain things, even though you hope that it's not that way. The reality is like I am a optimistic realist. This is what I've learned about myself because I am
do,
very
do,
positive minded.
do
But
those two words go together?
yeah,
Oh,
they go together because I make them go together. That's who I
oh,
am.
okay, okay, all
That
right,
that's it. That's a phrase.
okay, okay.
Anything can go together. It's your identification of who you are. So I've realized for myself that I am an optimistic person, but I'm also a realist. That means that I will think positive, I will see positive, I will do as much positive and project as much good in the world as possible. But I'm also a realist. So I do realize that some shit just ain't gonna be what you want it to be. And so when you put those two together, you get, where you understand the reality of life, but you're also hopeful and solution focused. So you try to project more of a positive outlook than harping on the negative.
So you've just thrown me into a positive, pessimistic uh, under well, wow, under the bus, but that's okay. That's
What you
okay.
mean? No, I'm not throwing you up under the
No,
bus. Why do you feel like you throwing up under the bus?
because I'm still trying to find that positive grain about mankind. Like I said, it's frightening to me to think that we are the most intelligent things in the universe. That
I
scares
mean,
me
I
more
don't
than
know if we are. We just see ourselves as that. Even if we weren't, if we are the people, it's like if you get the hunter the opportunity to tell a story, it's gonna always glorify, what I'm saying, their perspective and not anybody else's. So we could not be the smartest species on this planet, but
No, no,
because
no. On the planet, I'm good with the planet. I'm saying in the universe.
in
I
the
mean,
universe,
yeah,
shit, I know we ain't the smartest anything on the universe. I
yeah.
believe in alien, well, not aliens,
Well,
people,
aliens,
extraterrestrials. Look,
ET, whatever
just
the hell you
just
want to
the
call
fact that they have a word extraterrestrial lets me know that they didn't damn discover some shit. So, like I'm just gonna say that.
them.
I believe
Well,
it.
yeah.
I
Well, yeah.
believe
Hey,
that we might be a super species.
yeah. I mean, but like I said, after you see all of man's inhumanity to man, it's kind of like just like like I said, very very frightening. I wanted, one of the things that I wanted to talk about because I see it on TV every day, and I'm always looking. I mean, I'm trying to figure out. Like I see these people that are getting 30 days or 90 days, and they're talking about they're going to prison, and all of this, and
For what? For
then
Martin June 6th.
then, well, I mean, to someone that's been to prison, I mean, it's a farce, but but to someone that's just listening, oh, these people are, they're going to be, like, beaten by the inmates and this and that and the other.
Yeah,
And,
I
and,
I
and,
don't think that's the
it,
reality, is
in,
it?
in 90 days, you're barely just getting through your
The
orientation.
process.
Okay,
Mhm.
so come on, and then the chances of them, actually going. As a matter of fact, there's a prison, I believe it's in Minneapolis, for political guys and stuff like that. The low grade or whatever they call it now. But once again, it's a business. If you got enough money, then you're not gonna see San Quentin or Folsom or not. But but the myth is there. So uh, I look at these people, and it also goes back to what I said about people voting. If I was a Democratic candidate, every time my Republican candidate would tell me about freedom in America, I would play the riot. That's all I would do. I probably wouldn't say too much. I'd just play this. This is what my opponent stands for.
You
Boom.
could just you could make a whole reel of just the
Right.
protests or killings, and and just highlight some of, you don't even have to highlight all of it. Their only rebuttal would try to create the black on black crime theory, but that's
Well,
not really
they show what happened out here in Portland. They show some of the things that happened in Minneapolis. And every time that there's a situation, they play that up as to the fear tactic, as we've talked about black fear. But there's no retaliation on the other side to play the reels of this fucked up stuff that you're doing here too.
right.
I mean, why not show, every time they talk about the Republican Party and God, let's show Trump with the Bible held upside down. I mean, as you know,
Oh,
speaking Freedom TV, we all have platforms.
I was just I saw a post on Instagram the other day where there was some backlash because a Muslim elected official was talking trash about some Christians, Christian white people that were on a plane, and they just, I guess, took over the whole plane singing music or doing hymns or something. And she got backlash because she said that, well, me and my family want to go and do the same thing. Like, people have been arrested as Muslims for that type of thing, but it is not frowned upon for other religions to do it. And when you just said that, that reminded me of that post.
See, now I'm gonna take my rose-colored glasses off and say that these people that were singing were white Christians.
Of course, of
Because it,
course.
because it didn't have to be Muslim. If it had been two black Christians, two
Right,
Baptists,
singing. It was
it's
anything that
oh,
was a little
I
bit
just
extra, they
like
would've been.
yeah,
Mhm,
I'm sorry, but could you please,
mhm. Definitely. I mean, and the video that they showed, they had, literally the guitars was out, standing up on the plane, like, they was extra, it was extra. Like, "Oh, y'all was wildin', wasn't y'all? Y'all just was doing it, huh? Y'all just took
you
over the
know,
whole plane, huh?"
yeah, but I'm spreading the word. You know, like and hey, you-
They
like I said,
crusading again.
like I said, here's that pessimist.
And
It's
no,
like
that's the realist. That's not the pessimistic portion because I was thinking about it when I said it because I was in my thinking chamber, and when I was there I was just like, man, like I'm a realist, like because it's not that I'm pessimistic when I'm pointing out the reality, like real, truthful. This is what it really is. That's not being pessimistic. That's not being judgmental or negative. That is the reality. But I also am a very solution focused, positive type of person, like to where if I meet a person, I will see the good in you before I look for something bad in you. I will try to help you before I try to hurt you or think, negatively of you. So, I'm optimistic, but I understand the reality of this damn life is crazy as hell. So I'm not going to put no blinders on in order for me to act like things aren't what they are just because I'm trying to be positive. That's what I call Christian denial, where they act like as soon as you meet Jesus, it's just voila, and now life is good and ain't nothing ever happened to you before and everything is just gone and no, you still need to heal. You still need to deal with that. You still need to address those things so you can quit talking about your demons and the devil is on your back. No, you need to heal and then grow and then be what you never knew you could be before.
yeah, it's y- when you start talking about pessimism and being an optimist. I think it's. I believe I really was an optimist until Obama.
He didn't do enough.
No, 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 no. Because I don't blame Obama because Obama's hands were tied. Obama could not do what
Anything.
what people.
Hey, if
I
there
don't
was
know
a
why I thought that.
stronghold before, if there was a limit before, it was an extra limit on him because as soon as he got in, they was already on his ass. As soon as he
Right.
got in that door, they was ready. They was ready. They was ready. Nope, nope. They was blocking everything. They was gonna hate on him like they
Well,
wasn't gonna let him.
as a matter of fact, if you remember, Mitch McConnell said when he was first there that it was his job to make sure that Obama was a one-term president.
Yeah, I mean,
So
they hated the fact that that he was black and got in that position, and it's so crazy because he did well and he held. I am not looking at all of the things that he actually was able to get done because I understand that the way the presidency work is not like you can really do everything you really don't want to do. You got to convince other people to let you do it. So I get that part that he can't do all the things that he may have promised. Nobody can because it's not realistic. That's not how the government works.
no,
Um, but the way that he held that position to me was great. You know what I'm saying? Where it was no scandals. He wasn't doing like he knew enough to not get caught up in no bullshit while he was the president. You know what I'm
oh, I
saying? Like
mean,
he knew he
come on,
was representing.
and I mean, let's be real. I mean, the last thing that you want is an angry black woman in the White House. So I mean, and I say that with a lot of respect. you know, but like I said, a lot. It was watching what was going on during his first term, where you could see the resentment building,
Hmm. The whole world.
and right, and when it was one term, it was sort of okay, but when you got a second term, oh my God.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
they didn't think he was gonna do it, but I am very happy that Again, I'm happy with the way he held his family together. All of the things that could have come against him was not a match for what he was called to do. I don't care about some of the political portions of it because anybody in that seat is a puppet. I just That's just how I feel. You know what I'm saying? They gonna tell you what to do, and then they only gonna let you do what they said to do, or they gonna get rid of you.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if you look at the politics, the real politics of his 2 terms, and if it had not been for Obama, there would never have been a Trump. And like you said, I kind of agree with what you were saying when you said, Trump was good in that he pulled the covers back from a lot of people that you thought were one way,
The
and
reason
then
why I like Trump is well, and now I don't want to say like because people they'll tear me a new asshole for saying I like him. It's not that I like him. I like the purpose of it. Like I already knew Trump was gonna probably win because I already knew the type of following that he would have. You talking about white people that are scared of losing their stakehold in this national race of people, and I say that because, literally, all he had to do was appeal to the rednecks, and I don't mean to be disrespectful towards anybody, but literally, that's what he had to do, and the people that had those type of tendencies or mindsets, and then after that, even if he, because when I look at Trump's history of with black people, I don't think that he's like racist, but I think that he knows the people that he needs to cater to. I think that he has a I think that he know how to turn it on. I mean, when his dad being like the
yeah,
head
yeah.
of like he know he like of course he know how to talk to those people and get those people going because of who his dad is. But I
Well,
also
yeah,
look at he's like a reject in the grand scheme of things. He's not like what
no,
they would put into office. He is the person that was not supposed to ever make it to that point. Like nobody thought that he was gonna win. Not even I
no,
remember when he won, he was looking like, "Oh shit, what did I get myself into? I was not supposed to win." He didn't think he was gonna win.
no. I mean, but when he did, like I've said, there are certain parts of my life where I did try to get a job, and like one of them was at Trump casinos, which was rather bad experience because I didn't think with the education and knowledge that I had that I should be picking up cigarette butts. But that's another. I mean, there was only certain. There were certain jobs. You knew that if you applied for a job, it was practically on your uh, the top of your application what the job was and what the job was for. And like I said, at one time when my brother was working in Manhattan, we tried to rent an apartment there, and uh, anyway, but Trump was never, Trump has never shied away from who he is. All you had to do was study, just like you did any other book, any other person, and you knew who Trump was. So I didn't,
I wasn't surprised by his actions, but I also think that he pandered to the crowd that he needed to pander to in order to win.
oh,
Um, I
but but then again, like, come on, Doc.
What?
He also pandered to a very certain religious group.
Uh,
Not just rednecks, but supposedly
Christian community.
the same crowd that were diametrically opposed to the rednecks. So how do you get the Christians and the devils to vote for you?
See, the thing is that there is a underlying conditioning of how to view black people. So and there are certain type of belief systems that the same way black people have been conditioned to believe certain things, white people have been conditioned to believe certain things also. So those people, they're conditioned to think a certain way. So it's like triggering that thought, triggering that thinking process. And then once you say certain things, they've been led all of their life to believe this way. So regardless if society says it's right or what, this is why you get people to say, well, I'm not racist. Like the best thing that could have happened for America was Trump's presidency, because the exposure of who people are would not have happened up under Hillary Clinton. It would not have happened because it would have been a whole bunch of the same old, same old. But he shook it up. And the best part was that he wasn't a part of the good old boys. He ain't go to college with all them. He ain't, you know what I'm saying? He don't know them from the same arena that they know each other. You're talking about people that get in position that have all gone to school together. They all in the same clubs, like you were saying. They playing golf together. They doing all these things. And although he may have access to some of those places, they wasn't fooling with Trump like that. Like that was not like, let's go
No,
hang with Trump.
no, but can we get a reservation on his golf course? You know,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
uh, I mean, like you said, I mean, it just it was the right time, and it has exposed America. But now that America has been exposed, there are, um, and and once again, I'm going to go back to me and the police, okay? Because I think people get things confused because the police department, as I know it today, is law enforcement. It's not about the neighborhood. It's not about the community. It's not about interacting with the people in the community. I mean, most of the programs that were actually made for the police to interact with the neighborhood and to get to know your police, quote unquote, have been scrapped. There's no more police athletic league for these kids to, and you know, uh, the police athletic leagues didn't just include boxing. They would, they had baseball, they had track and field events. Sometimes they sponsored the Junior Olympics. Uh, there were a lot of organizations that were out there for our youth, uh, and these programs are not there. So as you and I both know, especially when you're young, your mind is constantly spinning. You know, the old folks say you constantly look for something to get into. You know, so you have to cultivate that mind, and I think we're doing our youth a disservice when we're waiting until they're 14, 15, 16-year olds, and then all of a sudden we're trying to change that mode of thinking. If you don't, I, I was most vulnerable, especially to doing good, between the ages of 9 and 12. When I got to be a teenager, I started doing teenager things. I wanted to know a little bit about sex. I wanted to know a little bit about this, you know, uh, damn, there's a few $100 laying over there. How could I get that? I mean, there's things that just the inquisitive nature of a child. But there's a difference between the inquisitive nature of a child and the inquisitive nature of a teen, because a teen will usually try to act on those. What's your thoughts on
Well, okay, so I have two children. My
that?
son just turned 13 and my daughter is 12. So I am living in this moment right now. And it really depends because different children are definitely exposed to different things. For my children, I had them watching a lot of educational, Nick Jr., Disney Jr., things that kind of instilled some type of unity or togetherness or team working, things like that. Even when they got a little bit older and they was watching Teen Titans Go and things like that, these are all shows that are children's shows but have real adult education. They talk about real estate, they talk about these different things. So if a child is right now um even, I don't want to say being raised by the TV, but exposed to certain TV shows. Nowadays, these TV shows talk about the Egyptians and all of that. You know what I'm saying? They're trying to slide it in where they can. However, certain demographics are accustomed to certain things. So when you talk about extreme urban areas where it may be the projects or a lower income section where children might not have cable, they might not have certain amenities in order to be able to even begin to pour those things into their minds. And then on top of that, you got parents that are struggling, whether they're struggling with drugs, mental health issues, trauma, or anything like that, that if they're struggling, if they're addicted, if they got stuff going on, then a lot of times they're not putting their children in better positions because they're so boggled down. They're so busy trying to figure out what they're going to do for themselves that they don't say, okay, well, let me impart on my children so that they can grow and learn and all of those things. So yes, there is a very impressionable time, but I think it goes until you're about 8 or 9. I mean, scientifically, but in general, at that point, you start really becoming yourself, and depending on your parents, you are settling into who you'll be when you get about 13 or 14. It's just managing that portion, but getting a child to be interested in the things that we need them to be interested in, it's really contingent upon the parents, because even when they go to school, they're learning things. But then what are your parents teaching you when you get home? And with all of these things, this is why I say if you stop the quota based policing and you change the system where some of those programs are put back in place, then it would alleviate the missing programs or the things that weren't there. And then in addition to that, you have to bring in more social workers and psychologists and coaches and stuff like that. But if you train police officers in these skills, they'll be able to learn and have more compassion to handle their job differently. If they only go in a training in a combative way, and then they go straight to the street, they have had nothing to balance that out so that they won't go out there in shock and awe, like ready, because they get you prepared to some for some bullshit to happen. So as long as you're prepared for that, but not prepared to engage and have compassion and be understanding and all those things, and then a lot of people that are police officers, we're not talking about college educated most of the time. We're not talking about people that have any social skills necessarily. They're looking for a job. Just like some doctors aren't doctors because they have a real connection for healing. They need a job.
Well, but they went to school for that. But when you talk about doctors, I mean, he endured whatever, however many hours of education or whatever he had to go through. But one
That
of the
alone doesn't mean that they're going to be a good,
right,
upright,
right,
standing doctor.
right. But
That was my
and
point.
but you know, two things. With what you said, when you're getting 100 hours on the firing range, but 10 hours on neighborhood social interaction, you know, once again we talk about the mindset, and I think maybe back in the day we had a lot of those type of policemen that you're talking about. But I know if you look at the standards out here in San Diego. Now I'm not going to say, you know, I'm talking about what they're supposed to be on paper. Now we're not talking about what they actually are, but most of the time you get special preference if you have a military background. The military is a lot different than it was when I was there because now the military is all volunteer. So
I think they should bring back the draft. I think the draft was good in a se and I don't wanna say it like that because I gotta think about my grandchildren's children and whatever, but,
no, no.
in that time, the
What I want you
discipline.
to think about is the girl behind the tire. That's what I want you to think about.
I mean, well, she volunteered and she still was
Yeah,
behind the
yeah,
tires, so
you know,
it's not a
but that's
foolproof system.
right.
Ain't no way around
But
it.
yeah, I mean, like there are certain people that volunteer, but
Well, I just say that because, I think that when you look at the generations previous, of my generation, they had a certain type of standard of living, they had a certain type of care. I mean, they had their PTSD and their other issues to go along with that, but there was a certain type of structure that people that went to the military ended up having.
yeah, and there are countries, like Israel. I don't know whether it used to be like that. I believe in Korea. I'm not sure if it still is, but uh, you have a certain obligation to serve
To, I think,
in the military. So, you know, I I would definitely. I think everybody should have that experience. I'm not saying everybody should have that career, but I
right.
think everybody should have that. I
At
mean,
2
because
years is what they was, what the people that I served with in Korea told me.
yeah, okay, yeah, and so I mean, it's not like it's unheard of. As a matter of fact, I think for a long time we were one of the very few countries that sheltered our women in the military. In most countries, if a woman was in the military, she had to fight like everybody else. We used to have different standards, the wax and the wafts and stuff like that. I mean, they, for the most part, uh, served coffee and brought the donuts and the movies and stuff like that. They and then they went home. So things have changed, and I think uh, it would be a good experience as long as we weren't in a combat situation. I think that 2 years is just not enough time for a person to really understand what the military means if you're going to make it a career. And if you're only going to be there 2 years, it's like you're counting down the days.
I don't know about
You
that
got
because
after your 90 days in boot camp, your 60 days in AIT, you're 3/4 of the way home.
but
So
then you gotta go to a duty station and live that out. I don't think that that would be a bad thing, and I
no,
don't think that it would be, perceived or handled lightly, because there's still a possibility of war. But a lot of times when you go into a situation like that, you may go in with some preconceived notions because even though I joined, I went in thinking, what in the world did I just sign up for? But once I got in there, it was totally different and more enjoyable than anything that I could have ever imagined when I signed up. I was
oh yeah,
expecting them to be spitting in my face. I mean, and there were people like I always say this. I had drill sergeants that literally they would get in your face, they would yell and they would scream, but they would be so nice all the rest of the time, they'd be like, "Bro, you is not like that for real. You really nice. You just gotta act like that because this is your job." So, that was the situation for me. But um, I think that it's a good thing to experience. I was only in the military for 3 years now. When I went in, I did go in thinking like I wanted to make it a career. I wanted to retire at 37. I wanted to build my house. Like I had a whole plan. Like it was like, okay, this is how I'm going to do this so that I can live for the future and not have to worry about it later. Now, fortunately and unfortunately, things didn't go as planned, but in those 3 years, I learned so much about people, about myself, about the government, about teamwork, about values and morals, and just discipline, to where it really gave me a solid foundation.
it's funny, because the one thing, even though that there's only myself and two others left now, but I've been here a long time. But the one thing that I missed was that sense of camaraderie. In other words, I knew that so and so had my back. I didn't have to turn back and check on him, and so and that was what I missed about civilian life, because I never was able to develop that trust in other people.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
was-
the civilian world is different because being in the military, it makes you a lot different than everybody else. Your mind is set, your focus is somewhere else. Then, like when I got out, it was the girls that I was around. They mind just wasn't where my mind was. Like my mindset was just somewhere else because of my experience in the war and all of that. And it was I'm not gonna act like it was impossible to relate, but it was a lot different, and then who I am as a person, it just made it kinda difficult. So, yeah, I definitely feel you with that. I think that's why because I had a, separation anxiety when I got the military, because it was like when you get out, they just kinda throw you to the wolves. It's like you go through the little transition meeting, and then after that, you get out, and it's just like, "Alright, see ya."
Bye. Yeah. See you. you
Yeah,
know.
good riddance. I hope you make it out there. Like, and so it's not like I don't know why people become homeless as veterans, because clearly, and I know for myself that they will send you on your way, and they will not, don't collect $200. Don't pass go. Just go straight to wherever you're going. All right, bye. We're gonna
Yeah.
scoot you on up out of here. So, but I felt so bad because it was like, well, damn, like I felt like I had lost my family.
Yeah.
and,
At least in prison they give you a bus ticket home.
yeah, like
If
I mean,
you,
they do your travel pay. I got travel pay. I drove
yeah.
my stuff from Kansas to Atlanta, and then I got me a little fat little check too. So that was good. But after that, it was just like you just feel lost. Like, oh my God, what am I doing with myself? That's how I got into church when I got into church, because I was in a studio with somebody, and I met Mace, and I was like, "Dang, don't he got a church?" But I was so eager for like a family type of connection, to where church at that point, it filled that void of what the military had offered. And it's the same type of void that when you go to school all your life with certain people, you with your family your whole life, and then you go to college, and then you with those people, and you with what I'm saying, and you end up having the same people around. So church was an extension of that for a time period. And then when I realized the church was a business, that was destroyed. And I was like, oh shit, what am I gonna do now?
Well, see, the thing that I found about the military is that as you specialized, your unit became smaller and your groups became tighter. Like once I became recon, then you depended upon those other 6 men or those other 8 men or those other 12 men. You were part of a group, but those were the guys that you ate, slept. I mean, you knew you. You know, when Johnny farted, you smelled it. I
Right.
mean, it was. So when I got into my little thing, it was hard for me, to not use my military experience and, show you that this is not a game. This is for real. I mean, you're taking on a situation where you have to control it or other people will get hurt.
Mhm.
And most people that were involved in that type of activity were what they call snatch and grab, or, opportunists. Well, the opportunity was there after the truck came, because the truck dropped off the money,
Mhm.
or, before the truck came and the night deposits were there. There were opportunities, but you have to recognize your opportunities,
Right.
you know. So, and once again, you have to become a family. You
Right.
have to depend upon one another. Otherwise,
A lot of people don't
I
understand
probably
that
wouldn't be
concept.
talking to you. You see,
Mhm.
I'd be doing life somewhere, you know, talking about woe is me, and damn, am I ever gonna get out of this place? You know, so like I said, hey, I, there are certain parts of the military where yeah, I might have used them the wrong way, but hey, they suited my purpose. You know, I was told to improvise. Boom.
Mhm.
I got no problem with that. you know. So, but kind of getting back on topic there, that need to belong, that 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 will to socialize is also something that has been very much weaponized within our society. You know, even in prison, you need to belong to the same group that you, as your skin color, you need to do, and then there's another part that says, like you need to do this in order for you to get out, and I mean, and so uh, eh, there are a lot of weapons pointed at us, but we don't seem to have a defense for them. We just seem to accept being surrounded and accepting our annihilation. I'm gonna record this. I left you speechless. What?
This is the thing, like, nothing changes if nothing changes. It ain't shit changed. At the end of the day, like, it's a lot of hopeful narratives about how life should be or how life could be, but literally there is very little change. And even if we go and teach everybody that we know everything that we know, that doesn't mean that the system is going to change. So the problem mostly is just addressing the system and then, well, learning the system, because a lot of times we don't know enough about the system to even address things properly.
So, it, do you think that is by design or by neglect?
Both. A neglectful design. I don't think that 100 years ago they expected life to be what it is right now. But I definitely think that over the last 100 years they've definitely did everything in their power to not change it, which is why the elections are and have been and seem to be rigged. Another reason why a lot of laws don't get changed and things don't get in place, because right now the system is structured to protect certain people. So as long as the system stays structured the way it is, then it'll continue to protect those people. But the minute that you start restructuring the system, even when you think about the anti-lynching law, when you put that in place, now you're affecting how they've been doing things for so long. So certain things can't get changed unless you get new people in place. But the people that's going to be in place, if they're not kind of totally disconnected, and I say that because if you got somebody with the same beliefs getting in office, then you're gonna get the same results. But if you get somebody that's disconnected from the norm or that has their own will, like the defense no the education secretary, her daughter, if she ever ran off for office, she would be a good person to run for office because she was willing to speak out against her mother and the things that she felt was wrong with what they were doing. But everybody is not close enough um to make that type of opinion and then to be vocal with it. A lot of kids, um for their parents, they're going to just fall in line because they want the stuff and the things. It's very rare that a child is going to test the waters knowing that they will jeopardize whatever structure of getting taken care of will be in place. So in order to really make the changes, you got to get all these old people out of office. I've been wondering this for a long time. Like when you get all the old people out of office, who's gonna replace them? But then also, like, are they harvesting organs or something? Because these are they longest living people in the country.
Well, yeah, I mean, what Senator Thurman served in Congress for almost as long as I've been living. I think
Mo-
60, 70 years, something like
Most
that.
people in Congress and Senate are well over 20 to 30 years in office, if not more, in a lot of cases. And I definitely think that a great portion of fixing our democracy is limiting those seats, because how are you sitting in office for 30 years? How is some shit gonna change if you the same person that was there when it was messed up? You're not going to change it now. And that's the biggest problem that we face, is that we're expecting people that like the way it was, the good old boy system. And we're trying to restructure things. And they're like, no, everybody needs to be fired. But that's what I was saying earlier, as far as when you get a new company, everybody normally has to get fired because you cannot what's that say? You can't put new wine in old wineskins. You cannot put a new company with the same old people, because the same old people gonna do the same old thing until some changes are made. So you kind of got to get everybody that's in there or been in there out, but we have nobody to replace them with. We're not proactive enough. We're too reactive. We always wait until something happened and then we're gonna do it. We can't do that. That's not going to solve anything. That's not going to get us far at all. We need to be planning, but that's the problem. We talked about earlier, you asked about the generations and the divide or the gap. It is that they weren't planning for what was next. Even though I don't think the government planned for 100 years out, what they had in place was structured enough, and they've micromanaged it enough to where it hasn't changed much. But we haven't done anything to push it along and to change it either. So everybody just been going along to get along. So as long as that's in place, we'll continue to get the same results. But when we begin to educate ourselves and vocalize our education, and that in itself will change the narrative. But as long as people been in office for 30 years, they're going to keep them same things that they've been doing for the last 30 years. They don't see nothing wrong with it.
But see, Doc, here's the problem. Now, I can't speak to you about 100 years, but I've read about those other 25. Now, I have not, and this is the reason why we're having this discussion, is because when I was even younger than you are, I was having the same discussions with people. Why are these people in office in their 70s and 80s? The people that replaced them have now stayed until their 70s and 80s.
That's how you
And
keep
and
the system
and
going.
and, and as you said, even though there might be new faces, they've kept the same old platform.
Yeah.
And that's what hasn't changed, and that is what is scary to me, because you speak of 100 years. I know in these 75 years we haven't learned. We we
Mhm.
we, we have not. We are still,
I mean,
part of being a wise man is learning from your mistakes. So we
that's
have to be
evident from Christianity, though, James. Like,
no,
look at
no, no,
the
no,
Christians.
no, not just from Christianity. This goes back even to when we were tribal, back in if you want to say some of us, Mother Africa or indigenous people. This is how you know we have passed down our wisdom through our elders.
I
This
don't
is
think
what this is what we do. This is what we
no,
was.
the wisdom
This
was
is
not passed down because it was stolen. They was killing the people that was gonna really tell us what we needed to do and how to
Yeah.
do it. They killed those people off. They left the weak ones. They left the ones that either wasn't saying nothing or wasn't gonna say too much, or they attacked the families of the strong ones and minimized and made them weak because they was afraid of what would happen if they kept going strong. So it's like one
All
of
right.
those.
I
go on,
agree.
brother Williams.
Yeah, let me jump in on that one because we have to recognize. Remember, when you look at the history of how they basically degraded and destroyed the strong blacks on the plantation, and we still suffer from that same mentality because just like what Dr. Case is saying, remember how that the traumatization that came along with that, and how basically an example was always made. Going back to what we learned from just COINTELPRO in terms of assassinating our leaders, the same thing. What the community learns from, and I emphasize this a lot, is terrorism. The United States government, as well as majority of governments, practice terrorism on their citizens. And oftentimes, when we think terrorism, we think outside, some type of outside force coming in and attacking us. We don't think about the fact that our own government plays terrorism on its own citizens in terms of making sure that they operate a certain way as it applies to how the citizens think, act, and do their day to day operation. So terrorism is being implemented upon specifically as it applies to what we're talking about, the black community. When we try to stand up, when we do anything that has to do with being dealing with self-determination and advancing our pocket of people, then they implement means of terrorism on us. And that even goes back to some of this, some of the reasons why I wasn't on the show last week, was dealing with a situation of terrorism in Lakeside, California here, where basically a 16-year-old girl was stabbed by a racist family, a son of a racist family, who was 17. Mind you, the father was present, and they attacked this young lady and stabbed her, and they locked up the 17-year-old and did not do anything in terms of prosecuting or pressing charges on the adult who was there with a pipe and cheered on racist slurs why this attack was taking place. And so what we're dealing with a system that does not equally impart itself upon the citizens based upon skin color and so forth. So a law can be written, but it is not going to be implemented across the board that affects everybody equally, as well as anything that's written for the same position of helping the people. It is not equally applied and equally accessed. So we are constantly dealing with elements of terrorism within the black community, and over time, those do tend to have the effects of self-perpetuating in terms of our being weak to some degrees, in terms of our acceptance of racism, our acceptance of oppression, which causes us to get in the mode of just coping. See, we're not in the mode of overcoming. When we think overcoming, those are the ones they want to take down. Because what we're talking about at that point is revolution, and we're talking about changing the conditions from which we constantly see ourselves oppressed. They don't like that. Government doesn't like that, whether it be black, white, or any different. Anything that's going, anybody that's going to reach out and attempt to change things based upon the patterns of social engineering. Going back to what y'all was saying earlier, it is a pattern of social engineering to where things are planned out over hundreds of years. This is what we call when we talk about social engineering in terms of governmental. What's the term they use is governmental continuity. Governmental continuity is based on being able to plan things out generationally as it applies to how the government operates. And then from that standpoint, all you're dealing with when you talk about your elected officials are people that are fulfilling the pattern of the way things are going to be ran. But the pattern is not being changed. The pattern of oppression hadn't changed. Why change it, James, if it continues to work? You don't change something that works. So when you talk about us constantly being beat, constantly being oppressed, constantly being attacked, our methods when we attempt to change is small numbers of us changing, and those small numbers tend to get attacked, tend to get just anything that has to do with suppressing that, pressing that gene, pressing that
Isolation.
genetic, and isolate it,
It's that
and to
black
the
sheep.
yeah, to the degree to where basically a not enough can happen within a certain amount of time. It takes more people. That's why I always say we need more of us in the community, more activism, more grassroots movement, more people involved. That's also why I talk about how the family structure in terms of what how we view things don't map and don't work out the same way it does with European families. Our family structure means individual, family, and community, all encompassing, not just looking out for your own blood relatives in your own household. We have to look out for each other and build our community that way. Why do we need to do that? Because we can't take for granted that a black community is going to what circulate the dollar. A black community is going to come together. A black community is going to be able to bring itself up and promote business, promote development, promote production versus promoting consumerism, because
But
those are the images that are portrayed.
but Brother Williams,
James, wait a minute, because
my point is that what you're saying is are the teachings basically of Marcus Garvey, and we have
Yeah.
not learned those lessons within well what's that's the 1930s.
see, but
So go ahead, Doc.
that's the part. Like a lot of our heritage was not passed down because nobody told us those stories. They rewrote the history books and then programmed us to believe what they needed us to believe during the school. So when you talk about like real history and the heritage, and then a lot of times people older people were afraid to talk about certain things or didn't want to talk about certain things because of the trauma that they experienced surrounding those events. So a lot of things that we needed to learn, the information has not been available. Literally, they killed the ones that would have told us the truth. The ones that would have stood up and went against the grain. Those were not the people that made it. The people that made it was the ones that was going to step and fetch. They was going to do whatever they was told to do. So the voices that we needed to hear to teach us the real history and heritage of brown and copper skinned people that never got beyond the point of where they were.
See, I remember hearing those words from my grandfather. You know, stay in your place. And my grandfather had a good job in the steel mill, but jobs were also regulated by the color of your skin. You couldn't be a foreman or a supervisor
Right.
unless you know. So my grandfather knew how to stay in his place. Unfortunately for me, he didn't pass that down. You know, he taught me that I was supposed to want better.
Yeah.
You know, now better back then didn't mean I had to have a new car. It didn't mean that I had to have a pair of Buster Browns, but I had to be clean. and I had to represent
But that
Mr.
go back to what
Glover
we were saying.
every time I went out of that house. I had to represent my family.
But that goes back to what I was saying about the young man that got in trouble about his hair. There was a certain way that you had to represent your family and what you stood for up until the early 2000s. It's just been in since the early 2000s that people have been radicalized with their hair and how they present themselves. It has not been that has not been the standard.
Well, it came and gone because remember we went through a bout of that in the 70s. So it came and gone. Let me say this just about that. Going back to what you were saying about Marcus Garvey, keep in mind that one and see to me this is why I also emphasize MK Ultra because the study of MK Ultra dealt with the psychological ways in which we think, as well as they went into certain aspects of how heritage and culture plays a role into that. Within the African society, a lot of times the way we went about teaching things is what we refer to as mouth to ear. We didn't write a lot of things down. So when you kill off the certain people, what we was also referred to as the griots, the ones who held the heritage, who held the information, a lot of it, a lot of the stuff that they were taught was not, retained through other means. And these type of things were taught family wise. And
Mm,
even when you talk about Marcus Garvey and going back into that aspect, leadership in terms of the way the organization was structured and in terms of the knowledge that he had was not passed on from a teaching standpoint of teaching the next generation. We fail from the standpoint of not preparing our leadership to learn and pick up and take up the banner. It's the Messiah complex. That's why that word is used within COINTELPRO when they attack. Destroy the black Messiah. Because we have a tendency to look to certain individuals for leadership, which is why they also throw that whole word out there about black leadership when you don't see the concept or the term coined white leadership in the white community. Because they keep us in that same vein to
mhm,
where if we don't see an individual that is charismatic, that's standing up, that's being propped up to a certain level, then
mhm.
we're waiting. We're in wait mode. So we still think we have to be freed by this powerful individual that's going to come sweep in. And this even goes right back to some of the elements of religion that is subconsciously ingrained in that mentality, waiting on Jesus' second return. Don't
Mhm.
matter what goes on now, prepare yourself for the second coming. Prepare yourself for the black messiah. We have that ingrained in us subconsciously, and what happens within the black community is we end up teaching that same mentality to the next generation subconsciously. We're not conscious of the things that we do that's dysfunctional, that continues to pass on these things that allow things not to change for the better that you're talking about, James. And
I
then we have to go back and do what we say in the Panther Party: define, develop, and defend. If we don't define what's in the best interest of our people, there's no way we can develop it, and we damn sure can't defend it for the next generation. Go
I
ahead,
think
Dr.
we
Stacy.
know it's dysfunctional. We just don't like to call out dysfunction for what it is
Yeah,
because clearly over the last 50 years of church, what the hell has come out of it? I ain't seen shit. What when is the heaven on earth? Like when is that coming? Because y'all been praying, fasting, and all of that. Y'all been drinking of the blood and the body and all of that, and there is no real change. I've said this for many years now because it for me when I started studying psychology, that's when the light bulbs start coming on as far as church and religion. I was deep in a church when I went back to school. And when I started studying how the mass collective mind control basically and the social engineering and how all of those things play into a bigger picture plan as far as control, it really baffled me. And then things started making sense about life when I started understanding psychology more because now I understand that the things that we think we've been allowed to think that we've been told and the system has structured us to think this way because as long as we think this way it keeps us contained because you're in the system. It's about learning the system. So right now for our communities, the best thing that we could do is learn the system, but learn it in a way so that we can know how to maneuver within the system. Not no A lot of times we're learning it to so that we could fall in line. Ain't no more fall in line. I mean, yeah, fall in line to the extent in which you need to fall in line to get done what you got to get done to do what you need to do. But the goal needs to be, because you can restructure all of these things. But if you still gonna do whatever the hell they telling you to do, and you know they're gonna lead you down the off the cliff, then at some point we got to stop going off the cliff. We're not going with the herd of sheep that just one person go and they all go. No, we need to stop that. We need to get into a place to where we're learning to maneuver. We're learning to get the advantage instead of just going along to get along. You can go to college and learn enough in college to get the advantage. But a lot of people are learning and going to college to be workers. And as long as your mindset is to be a worker, then you'll never be able to help us structure the kingdom. I mean, now we
Let,
do need workers, but we need workers that are mentally prepared to be oddballs. Because in order to really be the person that you need to get us to where we need to go, you cannot be like everybody. I mean, you can blend in to be around, but you're not going to be able to stay along the same lines for long.
let me set out a premise here, and I want to know what the two of you think about this. Because I find, or I found, that I had the most time to study the system and to enlighten myself about the system when I was in the
Locked,
system, when I was locked up.
locked up.
Okay. That's what taught me the pitfalls on how not to bring my ass back.
You know
Okay.
where I learned? I
Well,
learned working as a work study in the VA. So it was kind of the same thing. I was in the system, but I was learning it
yeah.
instead of being just at its disposal.
But uh, there's also another side of this because even though you learn the system, you're within the system, there is a lot of recidivism.
Hmm.
So if you're in there and you learn and you know, why do you keep coming back and making the same mistakes, which I see us doing as a people?
Let me answer that to some degree. James, we can't make the assumption of looking at ourselves, especially us three here on this panel, as the example of what the average person does when they get incarcerated. In fact, it's like the program I do with the Panther 48 on YouTube. One of the members of the Panther 48, Brother Sight, he was incarcerated for 19 years. Um, and when he was locked up, he, as a Panther, established a rites of passage program for other inmates that was locked up that will give them the right tools so when they do get out, they're thinking like a leader. Again, to me, it goes right back to the mentality of, it's like what Dr. Case is saying. What is the objective of when we get higher education? What is the objective of when we are working within the system? That goes back to defining yourself. Remember, going back to what Marcus Garvey said: one aim, one goal, one destiny. If we as a people don't predefine our position, then everything that's done that is not based upon you defining yourself, you defining what self-determination means for you, and working toward those goals, then you're just basically just kind of just working your way through. You may be an intelligent person who has seeped through the cracks, but that intelligence is going to be used for your demise as a people, and it may prop you up as an individual because you intelligent or you're smart, but what is it going to do for your people? Nothing, because you did not have the goal or wasn't taught or wasn't raised with the mentality of building up your community, giving back, taking what angle you were able to get in and work that. to give back to someone else. Let's talk about that from a culture perspective. Again, we don't have a culture. Our culture was stripped from us as a people. When you take the Mexican, oh, you can take what I deal with my wife as a Filipino. When they get something, they hand it back and pull somebody else back from the Philippines and get them over here to prosper. And then they go back and they pull somebody. They're constantly reaching back to help people. It is expected. It is ingrained in their custom, their culture to help one another. We have been taught through the concepts of slavery went about and the way oppression went about to constantly pull each other down. We have been taught to pull each other down, and we
Crab
still
mentality.
practice that. Yeah,
The
we still
crab
practice
mentality.
that. That is what perpetually we do, and it's all subconscious. No one has to teach them and other cultures that are intact to help one another. It just comes natural. So what comes natural for us is to destroy one another. And we have to undo that. That's why we have to define ourselves, which is why I say every week we are on the battlefield, we are at war. And until black folks we recognize that we have been set at war against one another, then we're fighting a losing battle. As long as I don't declare myself at war and I don't recognize that I have an enemy and I don't know how to define who that enemy is, then I am destined to repeat the same cycle that we're talking about right here.
But but once again, Brother Williams, I go
Now
back
he got you
to
speechless.
no, well, because I go back to our culture as a people. This is not our culture. This is a culture that was ingrained into us. We had that same mentality as a people before we, however, we got into this situation that we are, be it through slavery, be it through
You
trade,
saying
whatever.
pre-slave? You saying pre 1500s? We were
Right.
already like this. Uh.
No, 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 no. I'm saying pre 1500s, we had that same type of help me culture. We had that
Oh
same
yeah,
type.
got you.
We, we,
That's true.
we had that
Yep.
same type of. It takes a village to raise a child.
Right. Which is how
It,
we
you know,
got in this problem by
right, right.
helping
Mhm,
outsiders.
mhm, mhm.
We got into this problem. Let's go
Right.
back to the Moors. The,
Allies,
the more the
allies.
more civilized, the more civilized Europe. And what did they get in return?
Annihilated, annihilation, the stripping of their culture and their religion.
Trying to
I
make
mean,
friends with the devil.
you know, that- so so that notion that this is our culture. No, this is a learned behavior.
Yep.
Mhm. Every ounce of it is a learned behavior. And the problem is that it's going to take a lot to get people to unlearn that behavior. And a lot of that starts with healing themselves and addressing
Mhm.
their own issues. A lot of what we see is projection. Projection, and then the divide and conquer of the house Negro versus the field Negro versus, the plantation Negro versus, and so that is seems to be the mechanism mentally that we're dealing with, in addition to um like literally teaching people uh the truth about their souls, about the narrative of who we are as a people. But the real problem is a lot of people won't believe that we were great before. They won't believe that there
Mhm.
were kings before that were black. They
And
won't
they
believe in the
and they
black
feel guilt.
Madonna.
They feel guilty for hearing that that's the case.
Oh, see, well, no, they've been so whitewashed mentally that they can't conceive the thought process that black people were the leaders and were the people that was worshiped before they gave us Jesus. Like there was a black Madonna, and all of the things that we know that's etched in the walls of the
Yeah.
tombs in Egypt were already in place. But those are the things that were stripped away, the understanding and the knowledge of those things. They didn't let us learn those things. So a lot of it again is going to be really trying to get people to see beyond the veil. They that That wool is over their ass, child. They ain't trying to see nothing. They like, it's Jesus or nothing. And we like, hold on. Jesus is limiting you to make you think it's Jesus or nothing. When there's a whole heritage and history and a level of understanding that if you just really get the information and the knowledge and really start looking and comparing the documents, like I research a lot. So I don't just take one piece of information. I'm putting it against what okay, so the Bible say this right here, but then when I look at history, I see all of these things. Well, then now something is off. Now something has facts, has a paper trail,
But
has some type of, what I'm saying,
that,
documentation to bring us up to date. And then something is you can only believe this, and if you believe anything outside of this, then you're going to hell. So
that,
one
that,
of
that,
these things is fear, and one of them is not.
Dr. Casey, you say you study history. Do you remember the Bronze Age? Have you ever seen a white statue come out of the Bronze Age?
But
And
that's
somewhere,
the thing.
and I recall, like you say, like you read, what was it? Feet of bronze, hair of lamb's wool, and like I said, I've never seen a white bronze statue. Yeah, maybe it's just
Listen,
me. Maybe I haven't looked far enough.
no, but the narrative. Okay, so technically, if we gonna put on Minister Casey hat real quick, so we'll put this hat on real quick. So technically, um, it's just so much when you talk about um the strongholds of religion and the way that Jesus has been painted in order to kind of persuade your mind not to see the reality of your own greatness. Because again, no, Jesus in the Bible, bronze, wool, that shit don't add up unless Jesus was like he must lay down and his hair got matted and tangled or something, and now they straightened him out. They got him a comb and got him together, for the pictures or whatever. But
Photoshop.
literally, if you look at when you talk about history, they all the statues was black. I'm talking about history where there was no white nothing. And then as the Europeans start feeling themselves, they was like, well, wait a minute, let's change this shit. We're gonna put all the white people up here because
Yeah,
these niggas know.
Yeah, I would say
we
that
came to the
really
age of
started.
marble.
I
Go
say
ahead, Doctor.
I was gonna say that really started being defined when you go back to Alexander the Great.
Mhm.
Um, but let's also go into this because I want us to talk about the aspect of how things perpetually get played and undertoned, and a lot of times we don't pick up on it. This goes into the polarization. Like when you refer back to religion, is either God or Satan. They create that polarization. But at the same time, even we do it to ourselves. Even when, and I use Malcolm X as an example. He talked about the difference between the field Negro and the house Negro, and he did it in such a way to where he created a polarization, and a lot of us didn't pick up on how that's decisive in itself. So he glorified the field Negro to the degree to where it pinned us against each other in terms of mentality. It's like we wanted to be the field Negro and we want to castrate or talk down on the house Negro. But what is this doing psychological wise? It's again creating a polarization to where it creates a divide. You see,
Extremes.
and it creates an extreme. These extremes is what they use against us, period, because it is a division and a divisive technique. Even when it sounds like we're talking about things from the standpoint of uplifting the best or uplifting, a position that is more powerful, we still are alienating a side of us. And when we teach each other to alienate, when we're already a quote unquote minority in terms of our power base, not in terms of our color, not in terms of being black, but our power base, then we continually operate from that same vein. In polarization, that's why I used to always talk about that from Donald Trump. He was a king with polarization. When you are able to implement polarization and get a people to come up with why they are better than the next person that's just like them, then like, what we're doing at that point is operating like individuals. And we can't build a community based upon polarizing each other, each and every person.
But the
And we have
government
to
need
stop
us to
that.
do that. They
They
need
want,
us
yes,
to do that.
they want us to do that. That's the whole
but
point.
but Brother Williams, the thing that kind of gets under my skin as far as that is that just as Malcolm taught division, Malik El Shabazz taught unification.
And then they assassinated him. When
Right,
King when
right.
King attempted to do the same thing, because remember, they were going to start working together. That's why they had to assassinate Malcolm first. You assassinate this one side that operates from a by any means necessary first, and then you work your way to the other side that is approaching things from a quote unquote non-violent. You can take your time with that one, but once he started working toward recognizing how the United States was operating on a certain level, and he wanted to go global with his thing instead
Right.
of just stick down to civil rights and stick within the whole Christian era, then they got to eliminate him too. See,
See,
go
it's
ahead,
a
Casey.
certain way you gotta like, well, from observation, because I'm trying to navigate this right now myself. It's a certain way that you have to move when you're trying to be a radical. I don't want to say a radical believer or radical of anything, because they will target you. Sometimes I think that my little incident at the VA wasn't no by chance incident, like, but if you say that, they'll be looking at you like you're crazy. But
Right.
and I try to, again, this is probably the most talking on my political views that I do. Aside from this, I don't really talk about what I think, because I believe that they be watching. I think I might be on somebody's list, just because I had my thinking patterns are far greater than what they would want me to think. And I'm not big on conspiracy theories, but I know enough to be a threat. And but I thank God that I'm gonna live till I'm real old, and then whatever moves I make, I'm gonna make them in a way to where like, literally, when I do political speaking point episodes, I have a whole diagram of a lady that gets on there and say, I'm not here to cause no political uproar. I just think that there's a better way that we can restructure everything so that everybody wins. And I try to emphasize that a lot, because if not, then they'll think that you're totally against whatever it is that they get
Mhm.
going on. And that's when you get eliminated. You don't get
Right.
eliminated just for thinking thoughts or voicing your opinion. Is when you seem like you're targeting their system. So for me, I like to vocalize that I don't think that the whole democracy has to be destroyed, but it definitely can be restructured so that the problems that have existed don't have to continue to exist, and that everybody can win. Everybody can win. Everybody can eat, but they don't understand that black people aren't mentally empowered enough to take over the way that they think we will. They don't. They think that if we get too much knowledge that we'll just take over everything, but that's not even in the nature of black people. We're going to always be compassionate, caring, loving, and try to help people. The only time that we've been aggressive is because we were taught aggression from the people that came and ravaged hell on our lives and our ancestors.
But
So
Dr. Casey, the problem with what you're talking about is you're still coming from a position of equalization.
well, and
See,
no, it's just
elite
that,
don't want equalization.
No, no.
Power
okay.
don't want to give up power.
Well,
See, and
I
that's
have
the
You,
to
problem.
you find
I
that
have
in
to
you find that in the neighborhood, Doc. I
well,
mean,
no, I gotta I have to put my words a certain way for my own personal reasons. So
Everybody can win. To say everybody can win,
no,
uh,
no,
no,
the one
I
for the
don't want a
1%.
participation trophy. I'm sorry.
No, no.
The-
See, but the
My
thing
life is
is,
not a participation trophy.
the rich can get richer. The rich can still monopolize everything, and the other people can still damn win and eat and have damn food and be regular. Like, they have taken it to a point to where they don't have to take it in order for them to still be on top. They can still be the 1%, but damn, you ain't gotta have 1%, 10%, and then the whole got everybody else is just out here just like barely making it. You have to structure it to where everybody is satisfied, not just but not even satisfied, fulfilled.
Yeah,
Because if
I
you
don't like that word because
yeah,
that
because
kind of
that
that goes
yeah,
into coping. That's coping again.
you
Yeah,
see, I kind of was
yeah.
like, well, wait a minute, not satisfied because you can satisfy a person with just anything, but satisfaction can be temporary. So it's more about getting to a place of fulfillment and being purposeful. But the fear that exists in the government and in the European white people is that if we get in power, we'll know too much and we'll take over. But again, they don't realize that that is not in our nature as people. I don't think that we have that revenge bone. It now it could be because they didn't Christianize us so much and beat us over the head with not being of revenge. But we've never been that people. We've always been the nurturers of the world, of this earth. And I think that their fear is just the guilt. So the
But
guilt keep
I
us
The,
cycle.
the first six books of the Old Testament are about nothing about revenge for the trials and tribulations of the Jewish people.
Well, I don't believe the Bible to the extent to where
No,
most believers.
I'm just saying we teach revenge, we perpetuate revenge.
Uh,
This, uh,
Well, I would say this though. To me, what we have to look at it from order of society, because it's not just the we say this from a perspective of black people. It kind of goes back what you say, Dr. Casey. You got the 1%, 10%, and then it drops down, and then there's
right.
everybody else. And so, from that standpoint, let's just look at those figures without even, from a not a a standpoint of just pure facts, but let's just look at those figures. If we say 15% of the population is wealthy, well off, and like with BT Express, able to do it till they satisfied, and 85% are way down here. When you talk about the resources of any aspect of the planet, now we're dealing with something that, again, how do you equalize this small percentage of 15 to the point to where they willing to let go to give the other 85 an opportunity to increase their level,
See,
because
but
capitalism isn't designed to be able to do that. When you
you
go
don't have to
from,
put them on the same level. You can just bring them up to where they don't have to be
but that's just it. To
they,
bring them up,
at the
let me
drop.
let me let me talk about this from the problem that I see now when it comes to the way economy works within capitalism. You raise the ceiling, you're gonna raise another ceiling. If I give everybody $20 an hour as a minimum living wage, all of a sudden everything around them that applies to that has to raise their cost wage, their ceiling. The ceilings continue to
See,
chase
but
each other.
they don't have to do that. They're doing that for capitalism. But what I'm saying is that um the rich could get richer and the
They
poor
can't
could
get
be not.
richer. They can
they already
maintain a level
No,
of
no,
richness.
listen to
How do
what
you
I'm
get
saying.
richer
The
with
same
less
way
profit?
the same way Jeff Bezos went from a millionaire to a billionaire. That's how you get richer. You can still make those type of wage gaps, but you can bring everybody to a living circumstance. Like the inflation doesn't have to be inflated. Like it's some shit that they got going on that is unnecessary to bring everybody to a livable wage. I don't again this is
Doc,
my
if
disclaimer.
I
Wait, this is
raise
I gotta
your
give my
wages,
disclaimer. I gotta
go
give
ahead.
my disclaimer. My
Okay.
disclaimer. I am not trying to destroy the wealthy class. But what I believe is that um average people could live a better average life and the wealthy class could still be just as wealthy or wealthier than what they are right now. And the world could still be a great place. Now Do I have other thoughts? Of course I do. Will I say them publicly on this platform? Hell no, I ain't saying out what I really want to say. But this is what you're gonna get.
but yeah, yeah. Hey, uh,
I'm very particular about talking about certain stuff. I told you, I think that, I believe in those watch lists. I believe in COINTELPRO. I believe that they will target you and send out off agents and gimps to come around and see what you know or try to I feel like I watch too many damn movies, but at the same time, some of those movies will put you up on game.
yeah, hey, fool, fool,
You gotta be aware.
foolish ass me. If you confront me, I'm gonna give you my address. You can come see me. I'm fine with it. But that's just me. Dr. Casey, you going to give us your final thoughts for the evening?
Yep, you're
You,
muted.
you,
You're
you,
muted.
you,
Knowledge is power. I'm glad y'all stopped me before I really start going. Um,
He was poking at it. He trying to make you go ahead and say a few things.
um, books. Listen, audiobooks. You ain't got to sit down and flip no damn pages to learn something. Go buy an audiobook. Go buy a book. You can buy on iPod. I got a little iPod I put all my books on. And
You
I
got
just
you got you got a book recommendation that has a choppy beat to it, because you got to keep in mind the whole reason they listen to anything, most people, is because it has that carrier wave, is what I call it, which is a hypnotic beat, and then it don't
no,
matter what's
no,
coming behind it.
no, we got real books over here.
Uh oh.
I,
then
I,
then
I,
you
I
still then you still hurting my brain if you asking me to listen to somebody talk in a
no,
monotone
no.
voice
See,
while I'm driving.
the goal with audiobooks is to multitask. So normally if I'm out cutting my grass, I have an audiobook playing. Sometimes if I'm in the house and I'm working, instead of having music playing, I have a book playing. And I could be around the house, I could be doing anything. Or for myself, I have a speaker system in my house. So I could plug it up and it's gonna play all through the house, it'll play in the back. So literally sometimes I just would turn a book on, but the goal is to enlighten your soul. The more that you educate yourself, the more that you can know to navigate through this world without needing help. Help is good. Yes, unity. But in order to be united for real, you have to be united within yourself. You have to get your mental together. You have to address your issues. Anytime that I got something to say, it's always gonna be work on yourself. Get your soul together, heal, address your traumas. Quit thinking that drama is healthy. It's not. Quit thinking that stress is the best. It's not. Address those things so that when it comes up, you don't feel agitated. But also make sure that you are separating yourself. Don't put yourself in situations that you already know is gonna put you in a bad place mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Get yourself together. Value you, man, woman, child. Um, we need each other. We do need each other. But before you can be needed or supply a need, you have to be sufficient yourself. And that doesn't mean that because every need isn't financial. Some people might just need encouraging words. Everybody's gift is not the same. You might not be able to give somebody $100 or $1,000, but you might be able to pray they dang on, situation into a change. You might be able to speak life into a person that you didn't realize that you are capable of speaking life to. A lot of times people don't tell you that they value you or they look up to you, but they do. If they ask you a lot of questions, they watching. Utilize that to help somebody else. But first, get some information and knowledge yourself. If you are in the entertainment world, your lyrics are going to reflect on what you take in. So if you if you ain't talking about shit, I mean you ain't taking in nothing. You're around some bums that ain't teaching you nothing, they ain't pushing you. So you're talking about things that don't mean anything. But as you begin to pick up a book, anything, I don't care what, something cross your mind that you don't know. find out more information about it. And then once you find out that more information about it, it will help you to expand your knowledge base. When you expand your knowledge base, then you can truly grow. Now, I don't always do this, but pick up my book. It's my time. Uh, speakingfreedomtv.org, Speaking Freedom TV, it's speakingfreedomtv.org, speakingfreedom.org, and edu-freedom.org. Um, F with me, you know I got it.
Brother Williams, your final thoughts for the evening. Always glad to have you. What, if any, was there any progress made last week? I watched a couple of the things that you sent me as far as from the meeting itself. But once again, it seems like we're preaching, but we're not. The audience is just not hearing the sermon.
Right. And with that, let me give a plug. Uh, all right, the YouTube channel that I'm affiliated with, that where we teach Black Panther political ideology and consciousness, is called the Panther 48. The word Panther, the number 48. Panther 48. You hit it. There's nothing else that's going to populate other than that. Panther 48. Next Saturday, I'm sorry, this coming Saturday, there's going to be one that we're going to put up that actually gets into the certain aspects of why we keep falling in the same cycle. And what I'm talking about on that is protest, and what protest is in terms of a culture or a tactic and a way of life for certain grassroots movements versus it should, in other words, it's a strategy where it should be a tactic, and how we have downgraded the effects and the ability to galvanize through protest to take things to the next level. So that's one of the things we're talking about on that broadcast. And so, like with this situation, it's evolving, but people have kind of got caught up in a certain expectation through protest that is really non non connected to real political action and real political work that needs to be done in the community. And so protest from that standpoint is where you galvanize and bring the people together to make them aware of our connections on certain levels of oppression. But now what do we do with that energy from there? That is the missing element, and that's one of the things we're talking about on the Panther 48. So I urge a listening audience to go in and check out that YouTube channel and gain some wisdom. Another thing I do want to speak on in reference to what Dr. Casey just kind of going into what she was saying, we as black people are willing to take a gamble on destruction and take a gamble on things that seem like they may have some type of individual gain, but collectively we have been unwilling to gamble on on progress. And so the appetite, and I say this from time to time, our appetite for progress and our appetite to do better needs to be redefined and needs to change. And like how she's referencing the hip hop community as it applies to a rapper that ain't got nothing to say in terms of the lyrics, I still have to go back to the carrier wave. The carrier wave is the frequency that everybody vibes to. It tends to ignore the data that's on that same stream. An example is just like how she's referencing just hip hop and a lot of artists not saying nothing, but they got that catchy beat, and that catchy beat is what causes people to go out and buy the album. But no different than past generations. I had to talk with someone today that was trying to bash hip hop, and I'm gonna tell you what I said. Sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time. Think about that. Multi-platinum selling record. The essence of what he is talking about is wasting time, not doing anything because he's defeated and don't feel like things will ever change. In the lyrics, he says, nothing's gonna ever change.
Change.
And so that's what we started off when I came in at 7:30 talking about. Why isn't things changing? See, that mantra is ingrained in the music, and it becomes a hot seller. Why? Because it is promoting psychological destruction in terms of us being able to build ourselves up. So the same thing that happening with hip hop now as it applies to that has been happening through the music industry, period. Why? Because again, that carrier wave is that music, and that music becomes catchy, and you can hide any message in that. MK Ultra talked about that. So it's using these tools as weapons against us. So we have to know, people, we have to know that we are at war. And when we recognize this, we have a better chance of being able to navigate a battlefield. But if you don't know you're at war, you don't recognize that you're on a battlefield. And you just at that point gonna just be target practice. And we continue to allow ourselves to be target practice, and we don't have the appetite for what Dr. Casey was talking about in terms of audiobooks, because most of us have again don't know that we're at war, don't know that we're the target, and that we're doomed for extermination, mentally, physically, and spiritually. So, from a mental standpoint, I need to develop the mentality. I need to develop the appetite to want to do more, to want to take in more, to want to learn. So I was poking at her to give her so that she can give us some examples of when to listen to an audiobook, because I think 90% of our people think about anything coming out of audio speaker as being music, and they want to jam what they music in the car while they going driving down the street. They don't think about those other examples she said that references, oh yeah, I can listen to audiobook when I'm doing this. So our appetite for growth needs to be redefined and redeveloped. And I'm going to win on that one.
Hey, well, I appreciate both of you as always, and always a very good conversation. And hopefully, we'll all meet back here next Monday.
All right.
All
Good
right.
night.
Good night.
Talk to
Have
you.
a good one, everyone.